Hey everybody, welcome. It's your Saltwater Guide with Bill Varney and Captain Dave Hansen here. We're live today. It's Okuma Wednesday. We always talk about Okuma products on Wednesday. We got some great videos to show you about Okuma today. We'll go a little bit later in the day and show you. And Bill loves to fish with their spinning reels, and so do I. And I just can't say enough about Okuma and the support that they've given me over all the years. I've been with them for a very, very long time. And I got the president of Okuma and the president of product development and the former president of Okuma all coming down to fish with me here on the 6th and 7th and 8th of November down here in Cabo. So that should be a good time. We'll make plenty of content with that. But today is surf fishing with Bill Varney. We're talking everything to do with surf fishing today. So let's get the show started. Bill, welcome.
Hey, great to be here, Dave. Really good to see you. Before we talk about surf fishing, though, we want to know how you did up in Mag Bay. What was going on up there, and how was the surf, and how was surf fishing?
It was wonderful. We caught broomtail grouper, cabria, pargo, snook, croaker, yellow or orange-mouth corvina, several different kinds of croakers, black croaker, silver croaker, all kinds of fish I've never even seen. I think we ended up with 13 different kinds of fish. And anchovies, the California anchovy, have invaded the bay down there, which we've never seen before. So it was pretty incredible to see all that. It was just an absolutely blast of a trip. But I'm going to let you talk for a minute. I got to run downstairs and grab the charger because I've been going live with Justin, and he's still live on the back screen. We can see him. If he catches a big fish, we'll go live. But go ahead and talk for a minute. I'm going to take me off the screen and grab my charger before we go dead.
Goodbye, Dave. So yeah, surf fishing has remained good. You know, we talked over the last couple of weeks about the water temperature, and that was one of the things that we saw over the summer. This summer was this really big variation in water temperature, which was odd. Maybe that has something to do with the La Nina coming into place, but if we went back about 2 weeks, about 2.5 weeks ago, San Diego went from 72 degrees to 62 degrees almost overnight, and then it recovered again. So the temperature up and down the coast really has been about 62 to 65. And what's interesting is it's been 62 in San Diego and 65 in Santa Barbara, the water, and 65 in San Diego some days and 62 in Santa Barbara. So it's all been around that temperature. And what we're finding, of course, is that we're having these swells come from the Aleutian Islands in Alaska and coming down the California coast. We're going to see a big swell this weekend, really kind of starting tomorrow from New Zealand. And those swells are coming together kind of in the middle of California, and it's really boxing in all this water. I mean, have you noticed that offshore, Dave, that the water temperature has been stable over the past week or two versus we went back a month ago, we had these really big variations in water temperature?
Yeah, well, they're not getting slammed with all that wind anymore from the west, I think has a lot to do with it. Justin's over at Catalina right now. You and I kind of watching him for a few minutes before we went live. The ocean's flat. He's on the back side of Catalina. So I think that's got a lot to do with it. I think it's just a late season again.
It does seem that way to some extent, although it's been such an interesting year because, as you know, in Mexico, there's been very few hurricanes. And if you and I went back, yeah, thank God. But, for you, for us surf anglers, we don't want Cabo to get wiped out, but we want to see hurricanes that go in that fetch that's from like central Mexico, South Mexico, Veracruz, out to Hawaii, because that creates all this south swell up here and creates all this warm, clear water. But this year we haven't seen that from Mexico. What's interesting is if you went back about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we had 22 hurricanes originate off of Mexico. And here we have a year where, we've had 3 or 1 or hardly any. So few, it's hard to count. But of course, we've really been helped out by the South Pacific, where if you're down in Australia and New Zealand, of course, their season is opposite ours. And rather than hurricanes down there, they have cyclones, and those produce 30, 40, 50-foot seas. And then those swells, they move anywhere from, gosh, I'd say 4,000 to, if it's Alpha Antarctica, 6,000 miles, all the way up to Southern California. And what the great benefit of those swells versus Mexico, for example, in a hurricane, is not only does it push all that water north, and think about all that inertia over 5,000 miles that's going to push water north. But the other good thing about those swells that come from so far away is that the amount of time between the sets of waves is anywhere between 15 and sometimes 30 seconds, which in the surf fishing world is fantastic because it gives you a chance between the swells for the current, the water to calm down, for you to make casts, for you to get your bait in the right place. Whereas when you're looking at northwest swells, which we'll see coming into the winter, definitely January, February, March, April, where the duration between the sets of waves is 5, 6 seconds, very, very difficult to surf fish. So we still have some really great water quality going on.
And hold on one second. Renee, you lost us. We're right here. Everybody else, can you all see us? Can you guys see us here live? Can you see us? Anybody? Hello? Just leave a comment. Let me know. If you lost us, we need to know. If you can see us, we need to know. But as far as what's going on with the swell, Justin's got saying that there's a big swell at the island today. Bill, you can see us, Brad? Thanks.
Exactly. That swell is beginning to build today, and that swell is out of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, out of the Northwest. This will be the first in a series of swells that we're going to see coming down the California coast out of the Northwest. So that is going to signal going into November the change in water temperature as those cyclones end down in New Zealand, Australia, off of Antarctica. So that's why he's seen that swell. We have a low coming down the coast. We expect it to come into California on Saturday. It's going to be accompanied by a bunch of wind out of the Northwest on Saturday and Sunday. And then it looks like maybe Sunday night into Monday, we're setting up for a light Santa Ana, which could lead to a very beautiful week next week.
Oh, okay. Perfect. And then that swell, that's only going to help the surf fishermen, right? Because it's going to churn all that stuff up and release all the worms and everything in the sand. This time of year, you were saying last week when we were talking, no more sand crabs, right?
Very few sand crabs. There's been, I think, the greatest accumulation right now is kind of Hermosa, Manhattan zone, and people are still finding some crabs on the open beach up there. But when you get down to San Diego, almost none down there, and Orange County, many less than there were before. One thing for everybody to remember is that this time of year, going all the way through the winter, first of all, they're not as effective as a fishing bait in the surf because it's not their season. So think of it in this terms. Let's say that you went to the store, the supermarket in February and got apples, February, March, April. Those apples probably aren't going to taste too good. But if you got those apples back this time of year in the fall, when all of the apples are ripening in Washington and coming down to California, they're delicious. So it's the same kind of idea with surf fishing. Those sand crabs, when the numbers of them go down, they're no longer molting. They're no longer really have many eggs in them. They're not as attractive to fish. So we're going to see those fish transitioning out of those sand crabs now anyway. And really, here's the big secret, is that this month, the month of October, is the month where all the bean clams, all those little tiny clams that we see the shells by the billions on the beach, they spawn in the month of October, which means that they come up to the surface of the sand, usually in shallow, all the way out into the deeper water, and they spawn. Now, a lot of times this time of year, you'll walk along the beach, maybe at low tide, and you'll notice that there's areas of it looks like little hair sticking out of the sand. Those are the antennae of those bean clams feeding and also spawning. And so this time of year, Corbina and all the surffish, they concentrate on eating clams. So a few years back, I was down surf fishing in the evening, and this dude was surfing a ways down from me, and he came paddling in and came walking over toward me, and we started talking. what a cool guy. He was a marine biologist. I think he had been just retired, but he was a marine biologist for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And he said to me, hey, we did this netting program where we net surffish from Newport Beach to Huntington Beach, every like half mile we tried it. And he said all of the fish that we caught in the net, which were anything from leopard sharks to corbina, perch, yellowfin, spotfin, croaker, all the different fish in the surf, he said, we found the same thing in every one of their stomachs. What do you think it was? And I said, sand crabs. I mean, you go to the beach, there's like sand crabs till your cows come home. And he said, no, every single one of them had clams. So this is the time of year to get out there and use your clams, use other natural baits in the surf.
Okay, so when you catch one of those croaker and you hear it, the back of them, it's grinding in their throat. That's how they process those clams, huh? They just get them in their mouth and then grind them up to get to the meat.
That is exactly what they do. And you know what's odd, Dave, is that even some of the smallest barred surf perch who seem to you to be not very strong and they don't really have teeth and all that, they can crush those shells. They can crush mussel shells in the back of their throat. They can crush certainly the hard sand crabs back there. And then of course the clams. So you're right. They inhale those bean clams. They crush them in the back of their throat. They spit the pieces out. They eat all those individual pieces. And that's how they operate.
So down in before you get to Ensenada and between Rosarita Beach and Ensenada, there's a La Fonda hotel right there. And when you go to the beach there's millions and millions of those little clams. Those are bean clams. Do they not get any bigger?
No, they don't get any bigger, but
Really?
they are insanely prolific.
Oh,
I mean,
it's something you definitely have to go see if you don't understand. The first time I saw them, gang, there's hardly any sand there this time of year because there's so many of those little bean crabs. It's the craziest thing you've ever seen. They're everywhere. But I always wondered, Bill, and I'm glad that we're talking about this. I wondered if they got bigger because there's zillions of them, but they're only like that big. That's a big one too. That's a big one.
That's right. Yeah, they only, I mean, maybe an inch wide at the biggest. I mean, they really are small, and that's the size that they mature at. And then of course they have a relatively short life span. I think they probably live about 2 seasons and then die. And then we see those millions of shells that wash up on the shore from them. But when you're surf fishing, and it's really true for all fishing, but surf fishing in particular, look for what occurs naturally in the area where you're fishing and use that for bait. So if you're fishing near a jetty and it's got limpets on it and mussel on it, that's what the fish are feeding on. If there's sand crabs in the sand that you're standing on, they're feeding on the sand crabs. If the clams are on the surface, like in October, this time of year, they're feeding on the clams. And how this all came about was that I knew over years of experience that they would eat clams this time of year because I would go in estuaries and get little neck clams, use those for bait, catch some really big corbina and some really big spotfin in addition to that. Of course, I talked to the fish and wildlife scientists who told me that, they're big clam eaters. But the thing that really clued me off one day was if we go back about 15 years ago, my son was on the surfing team, and one of the kids on the surfing team caught a wave and he surfed it in really close to shore, and he fell off the front of his board. I don't know if his fin got caught in the sand or whatever. He did a face plant right in the sand. And when he came up out of the sand, he had cuts and he had bean.
Justin's hooked up to a big fish. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on, everybody. Sorry about that, Bill. Justin was waving his arms. He's got the net out. I just wanted to see what it was. Here it comes. What do you got? What do you got? Another sea bass. Woo, that one looks legal too. Sorry about that, Bill, but I just wanted to go over there.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff.
Live on the show, gang. Live on the show. Crazy. All right, back to what you were talking about.
Back to the story. So my son was down there on the surf team, right? And this kid catches the wave really into shallow, and he falls off the front and goes flying off the front of his board head first onto the bottom. And he comes up, and he's got scrapes all over his face. His face is bleeding a little bit, and bean clams stuck to his face. And so when my son came home and told me that story, I was like, it was like October 12th or something. I said, oh my gosh, that means that, that all the fish are running down there on clams. I went down there the next day to the same spot and caught 2 huge spot fin croaker on clams. So clams work. This is their time of year.
That was my next question. How cool is that? Because it was in my head. So when you see that massive amount of bean clams right there on the beach, that's telling you that's downtown. You want to fish right there, huh?
Exactly. That is telling you, that would be like, going into Mag Bay or somewhere and seeing a huge ball of anchovy and having it pushed up on the surface from fish beneath. You wouldn't just drive by there. You'd fish right there because, that's the size, that's what they're eating. This is the color. This is what they want. So it's exactly the same thing in the surf. Happens all throughout the season in surf fishing. So from May to probably the beginning of August, sand crabs, just wide open on the sand crabs. Then we make our way into the clam period. Then over the winter, we're going to be making our way into the ghost shrimp and worms, lugworms and bloodworms. Going to work really well over those coldest months. Then right back into the sand crabs again.
And how are we hooking these little tiny clams on our hooks? How are we doing that?
I normally don't fish the bean clam itself because they're so small. Now, that doesn't mean you can't find some of the bigger ones and crack one of them open. You don't even need to take it out of the shell. You just lay it in your hand, I use a pair of forceps, hit it with a handle of forceps so it cracks that clam, and just put the hook right through. You don't need to hide it or anything. But if you're using something like a little neck clam, which, as I said, you can get in estuary areas, inside harbors, up in estuaries, rivers that come into the ocean, they almost all, where there's rock and sand aggregations, you can dig under those rocks and find them there. What I've learned about clams is that the clam muscle itself inside of the clam, and there's a little lip on clams, not as big as on mussels, but most of it is all the meat in the center. That is held to the shell itself by a white muscle. If you carefully take all of the meat out and allow that muscle to stay part of the meat, the first thing you want to do is just hook your hook. I use a number 2 or even a number 1, Gamakatsu 50409, or you can use a owner mosquito hook in a number 1 size. I'm going to put that through the meat of the clam, which is going to be the softest part of the clam. And then the very last part that I'm going to hook through is that little white piece of muscle. It's very, very hard. Well, it's not hard really, but it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not soft. It won't rip easily. So if you put that as the last thing that you hook through your hook, it will hold all that meat on the hook for you. And you can give it a nice hard cast on the Carolina rig and just a slow retrieve towards shore. And that's how you're going to get the big fish.
Now, would I be able to use Pismos if I had them?
Yes.
Just cut them up into strips and...
Definitely Pismos. With all of the rules and regulations that are out there now, it's all become complicated. Back in the day, yes, I would just dig with my feet while I was standing there fishing and find a clam with Pismo with my toes and pull it out. It could be, this big, or it could be this big. And then, yes, cut those into pieces and then use those on your hook. If you're going to use a Pismo clam, be sure to do 2 things. Number 1, be sure to know what the legal size of a Pismo clam is, because they have a size, minimum size. And then second of all, do not discard the shells until you're ready to leave the beach. Because if you got one on your line as bait, and a warden comes by and has questions about it, it's a lot easier to show them the shell that was a legal size or larger that you use for bait than not being able to explain it and him thinking you use one that's too small.
Well, you can also buy them in those little tubs, right?
I would never buy them in the tubs.
Why?
So you go to the tackle shop, they've got tubs of clams, they've got tubs of mussel. They do not work. They
okay.
work. I think they're giving off a little of ammonia because they're older and they won't work. So here's something to remember about that too. I mean, I can't give away all my secrets, Dave,
Well,
but
no, I'm just
here's another one to remember. So if I'm going to use mussel or I'm going to use clams at the beach, I'm going to go down usually like on Wednesday or Thursday. I'm looking at my tides, and on your saltwater guide, you can learn more about how to find the clams. I'm going to get the right tide. I'm going to go down there and get my clam or mussel. I'm going to bring those home, and I'm going to keep them in a cool place. So like inside of an ice chest, or maybe I have a frozen bottle of water adjacent to them, so the ambient temperature stays cool in there. And I am going to shuck those, both clams and mussels, the night before I go to the beach. I'm not going to do them 2 days before, a week before, and I'm not going to do them at the beach. There's nothing more fun than using a rusty fishing knife at 4 o'clock in the morning at the beach. Good way to lose a finger. I almost lost my thumb that way as a kid. So you want to shuck them at night. But the thing is that whether you do it over a bowl, whether it's a plastic bowl or a ceramic bowl, and then I ultimately put them in a Ziploc bag, and that's what I carry my clams in or mussels for bait. You want to collect all of the water and the juice that is inside those mussels. So if you just were to open a mussel, it's going to have all this water come out of it, and then you're going to take the meat out and you're going to put that in a bag. You want to take the meat and all of the juice. So when you open those mussels up and you spread that shell apart, you want to have it over a bowl that's going to collect both the water, the juice that's in it, and the meat that's inside of it. And then you're going to put all of that in a Ziploc bag, and you're going to take that to the beach. And that's going to give you something that's the freshest possible thing you can have and ready to go immediately at the beach. Those tubs that you generally purchase in tackle shops over time for me just have not worked.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because that was my next question, Bill, is the way that it feels, the foot, if you will, or whatever that is, that comes out and comes up, and that thing's like leather in the ones that you get in the tubs. It's like leather. It doesn't even look real compared to when you see a real Pismo clam. So that was my question. I wondered if it mattered, and obviously it does. It matters tremendously, gang. So
those surffish, Dave, they want the soft meat, just like you and I would. That's inside a clam or a mussel. They don't want the gristle, or the leathery tongue or whatever along the sides, or so. They want whatever the softest meat is. And the exception to that would be the lip that goes around a mussel. Both that really, really soft meat and the lip, those both work very well in the surf.
Oh, yeah. No, I can understand that. It makes all the sense in the world to me. Until you get it described to you the way Bill's describing it, you just don't quite understand. And then the ammonia factor, I'm sure when that thing hits the water, any fish in that zone is going to haul ass, because that scent going in the water there, it's going to make it yuck.
Exactly. And that's the thing I think that a lot of people don't understand about. And I really think it's the same in a freshwater environment. When marine, I was going to say animals, but plants too, when they die, they begin to give off an ammonia smell. You and I can't smell. It's like a dog. A dog's got like 3,000% more smelling ability than we as humans. And that is to some extent true with fish too. So they can tell either by tasting it or smelling it that it's giving off ammonia, it's going bad, it's old, and they move on to the next thing. That's why when you're surf fishing, whether you're using worms or clams or mussels or sand crabs, you want them to be fresh.
Absolutely. Makes all the sense in the world, just like lobster fishing. And then after we look at this video about spinning reels, I want to talk about oysters for a minute. So here we go.
Hey guys, this is John Bretz with Okuma Fishing Tackle. What I have here is one of the most exciting introductions of the year, the new X Series spinning reel, our flagship spinning reel. And what's amazing about this is Okuma was able to build a reel that's the best of both worlds. You got a tournament bass reel as well as an inshore spinning reel. So both freshwater and saltwater applications, 2,500, 3,000, 4,000 sizing, starting at 7 ounces. Super lightweight, but what's nice about it is it's very rigid, so you want to use it for inshore. It's a lightweight and rigid aluminum body and aluminum side plates. To keep it lightweight, we have our cyclonic flow rotor, which is injected out of C40X. So again, very lightweight, very corrosion resistant. As everybody knows, you want a good drag system. This is equipped with our carbonite drag system. The 2500 and 3000 output 22 pounds of max drag. When you get to the 4000, it outputs 24 pounds of max drag. These are 6.2 to 1 gear ratios, so when you turn that handle, you're picking up a lot of line with every turn. This is accomplished by a machined aluminum, CNC cut, AL70 aluminum drive gear. That aluminum drive gear is also anodized, so again, perfect for both fresh and saltwater applications. One of the great features that we have in this is what we call hydroblock body. So these are a set of water seals that prevent water intrusion. So that's going to be a good complement for both freshwater and saltwater applications. The other great thing is you have the machined aluminum handle that can be put on the left or right hand. It threads directly into the drive gear. It's a really thin profile, so lightweight but super strong. The advantage of this for both fresh and saltwater anglers is that when you pull back, there's no back play at all. One is that helps from the one-way roller bearing, but also the screw-in design helps eliminate any of that back play tolerance. Another amazing part of this reel for you inshore anglers is that you'll notice on the bottom there's no on-off selector for the anti-reverse. Why did we do that? That's another source for water to intrude into the reel. So we left that out. The majority of freshwater anglers aren't back and reeling these days, so this is a great addition to this reel that's going to make it really durable for both freshwater and saltwater applications. And the other thing that's really nice is it's a one-piece seamless bail, so there's no area for braided line to hang up in those small little groove connections. This is one-piece connection all the way around. This is an 11 bearing drive reel, so you can expect super smooth performance, super durable, long life performance out of this reel. It starts at a $219 retail for the 2500 size. If you want to find out more details on the new X Series spinning reel, check it out at okumafishingusa.com.
And gang, there's your QR code up there on the screen. If you want to check this reel out, you can go over there to Okuma Fishing Products, check it out with the QR code, or go to okumafishingproducts.com and check it out. And there you go, Bill Varney, Avenger series. I love those reels. I love those reels. They're a little bit lower end reel, a little bit easy on the pocketbook. Perfect for when you're going surf fishing because of the sand factor. But if you're going to go and you're not going to get your reel touching sand, if you're just going to go fish and you don't think your reels touch sand, get that other reel John was talking about. But if you're going to surf fish, the Avenger series is pretty bitchin' reel to use because there you go. Yeah, you got it all. You got everything you could possibly.
This is such a good freshwater reel. Oh my God. I can't tell you how good this Inspira is. I fish it for these big trout. You've seen them, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10-pound trout. And it is not only so smooth, but if you match up these freshwater spinning reels, because you can use this in the salt, works great in the salt, but you've got to be concerned somewhat about the sand and the salt water and splashing and all that. Freshwater, you don't have to worry about that whatsoever. But if you put on a soft monofilament on this reel, you can cast a 1/16 of an ounce lure 3 times as far as you can on any other reel I've used. It's amazing, really is.
No, that's bitching.
Okuma makes excellent products.
Yeah, they do. It's an incredible company that that's all I fish with. And if you watch any of my videos, you'll see me using them all the time. Just tons and tons of different reels, rods, everything just works for what I'm trying to accomplish. It all works great. What I was going to say about when you were talking about leave the juice in there with the mussel or leave the juice in there with the clams. Same thing when you're eating oysters, gang. When I'm up in Mag Bay and we're getting the oysters, you can't get them this time of year. The water's too warm. It's not going to work out well for your stomach. But in the wintertime when we're up there and we're getting those oysters, what we pride ourselves on is never letting that water or juice or whatever it is leave that shell. When you're shucking them, you keep that in there. And fish know. They want to have that taste and that flavor that comes with it being in that water or juice or whatever you want to call it in the oyster shell. So I know what you're talking about, Bill, with the mussels and the clams for the fish. They're just like us. They want what tastes the best.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely. And most natural. That's their natural food. So when it's dry, kind of dried out, and then it's cast out of the ocean, although it's made more moist by the water, obviously, it doesn't have all of that magic attached to it. So you definitely want to use the whole thing.
And then if you had an opportunity to fish with mussels, when's that going to be time? Always? Is it always mussel time?
Mussels work all year long, but they work particularly well in August and September, and then less well, but well throughout the winter when other baits are not available. Because remember, surf fish, so whether it's corbina, spotfin, yellowfin, and some perch, but not a lot of perch, but all the other big fish, they all make their ways into bays, estuaries, harbors, and around rock structure in the wintertime. That's where they hide. That's where they find their food. If they're out on the open beach and a corbina is out in the open beach in the middle of the winter looking back and forth, it's not going to find any sand crabs. What's it going to eat out there? There might be some bean clams or something that come up to the surface, but there's nothing prolific. So they're going to go near rock structure like jetties, and they're going to back into those rocks, and they're going to wait for the waves to crash on that rock and wash off limpets, mussels, sidewinder crabs. All these things are going to be washed in the water, and that's where they're going to feed. So that's what they're naturally looking for in the wintertime, or whenever the water starts getting cooler and all the sand crabs make their way off the beach.
Now, I've been thinking about this question for a long time since we've been doing this show together. Is there ever, when there's not a big swell, is there an advantage to chumming?
You know, this is kind of a funny thing about chumming. I think chumming always works. It must, because there's like all these laws on salt and freshwater where you can't chum because it's too good. And I'll tell you why I know to some extent it works. If you have an area where there's a real big amount of water movement, it's probably not as effective. I have taken like big bunches of sand crabs and thrown them out in front of where I'm fishing to see if that would make a difference. But really the thing that got me one day, and this was like probably 20 years ago, I was down on the Carlsbad jetty, the jetties that come out right where the AES power plant is there. And I was down on the sand and I was fishing kind of, adjacent to the jetty on the sand, kind of fishing that angle. And there was a guy who was about 2/3 of the way out on the, looks like he's got a fish there, 2/3 of the way out jetty, which I didn't really see him. And
what do you got, Justin? What'd you catch? Another sea bass.
Looks like it, yeah.
Holy mackerel. Justin, can you hear us? Justin. No, he can't hear us, but he got another sea bass.
That's a beauty.
Man.
So I was looking out on the, out to sea, and from where the rocks were, I didn't see anybody, but every, couple minutes maybe or so, I saw this stuff like flying out from between the rocks and splashing in the water and flying out between the rocks.
Another legal sea bass.
Oh, that's a nice one. And another handful of what it was splash into the water. And then I see this guy stand up and stick his rod out. He basically had like a lift rod rather than a rod and reel. And he had some bait on, obviously. And he let it down right where he had thrown this out in the water. And he caught a big corbina and he brought it in on the rocks. He unhooked it. And then I didn't see him again. I saw this stuff come flying out from the rock. Well, he had muscle and he was crushing it with a hammer. And then he would throw a handful in the water, wait 2 or 3 minutes, and then drop his bait right there. And the fish were feeding there. So yes, depending on how it's all structured with a current and where you are adjacent to rock and sand structure, chumming works in the surf.
Now, there's no limitation yet on mussel collection.
The limit I think is 40 pounds. I'd have to look it up, but there right now, based on what you can take, it's way more than you would ever use in a fishing session. So there's plenty of room for that. Don't worry about collecting mussel. And you're going to find basically 3 types of mussels out there. You're going to find mussel that occurs on rocks that are outside of harbors. So Dave, you're really familiar with that. You look at all of Salt Creek and Laguna and Crystal Cove and all that. And there's these really big ones. I mean, there's some on the Newport jetties that are probably this big, you know, that are 10 inches, 12 inches long, 4 inches wide. So you're going to find those on the outside. They generally have a thicker shell and a lot more meat and grow a lot larger. And I think a lot of that has to do with the water movement. There's massive water movement outside harbors with waves are crashing on the rocks, which provides them A, more food for them to grow bigger, and B, a thicker shell because of the environment that they're in, such a violent environment. And then you have bay mussel, much thinner shell, very thin shells in comparison. And they have the same color meat as those on the outside of the harbor. They usually grow to about this size, maybe 4 to 5 inches in length. You'll find them for 2 inches, maybe to 4 or 5 inches that are good for bait. And those have a burnt orange, brown meat in them, very similar to the ones on the outside of the harbor. And then on the inner areas of the harbor, so the back harbor areas, when you find rocks about this big that you can turn over, you'll find areas of mussel that are also thin-shelled, about the same size, 3 to 5 inches, 5 at the most. And you open those up, it has a bright green chartreuse meat in it. And those are really effective in the surf. And it's one of those baits where it takes a little practice to figure out where they are. And then once you know where the sweet spot is, you can go back and collect 10 or 12 of those, take those to the beach fishing with you. Always know you can go back and get those chartreuse colored ones.
That sounds incredible. I dove a lot of the artificial reefs back when I was young and dumb. And those artificial reefs got the giantest mussels. They're like this big, like you were saying. The artificial reef, 35 feet of water. The ones off Camp Pendleton, those things are loaded with those giant mussels. But what I was thinking was we go down to San Clemente Pier, Newport Pier, Balboa Pier, or whatever. At low tide, the mussels are as tall as they're. You stand there at low tide and you look, and they're eye level all the way down to the ground or down to the sand or whatever. You just take for lack of a better word, a paint scraper, scrape it down there and get as many of them as you can, put them in a burlap sack, then take them to where you're going to fish. Before you get over there, you stomp on them a bunch and then go down there to the beach. I'm sorry, I'm an advantage fisherman. I like I teach all my guys when you fish the artificial reefs, bring the chum tube, bring the chum. Oh, Justin's got a big one. Okay, hold on. We're going live with Justin here. He's got a big whopper here. Justin, Bill and I are live with you. Okay, gang, we're watching this. Bill, you and I are on the bottom of the screen. We're watching what he's got here. Okay.
It's a good fighter.
Hard. Another sea bass. He's hiding it. He won't show it. Oh, yeah, it's illegal. It looks like to me if he turns around. I think that's legal. Don't you, Bill?
Yeah, it looks like it's definitely close. It's hard to tell from this angle.
Right. Woo! Yeah, Justin.
Another one.
They're going to get – oh, that one's not. Oh, well.
And where there's small ones, there's big ones.
Absolutely, and he's been getting them. All right, back to me and you.
So when it comes to the mussel world, isn't it crazy? There's so much information on mussels. So most people fish mussel incorrectly. Sorry to give you the bad news, everybody out there. And so normally people take that really soft center area, just looks so delicious, and they'll put it on their hook and they'll cast it out. Okay, it will just fly off. And so they'll take that little center thing, they'll put dental floss around it or silk string or something to hang it on there. Still wrong. The secret to muscle is two different things. Secret number one. When the mussel come off the rock or off the pilings or off the docks and fish eat them, they don't come off cleaned, okay? There's nothing that like opens the shell for them, takes the meat out, throws that stupid shell away, floats this giant piece of meat over to them. That's not how nature works, okay? When you're surf fishing and probably fishing in general, try to think the way that a fish thinks. Try to think the way that things would occur naturally in nature. So when a wave crashes on the rocks on a jetty and it rips off a mussel, it often will crack the shell, which will expose some of the meat and the shell will fall off into the water and the fish will eat that. So number one, when we use mussel, we often crack it, split it open and crack part of it off so that there is a remaining chunk of shell along with the meat connected to it. And then we hook all of that. We hook the shell. We fish the shell because that's what is natural for fish. And remember, these surf fish, particularly the big ones, they'll inhale that bait, that shell and all. They'll crush it in the back of their throat. They don't care that there's a shell on there. They'll spit the pieces out and they'll eat all of the remaining pieces. So number one, when you're fishing mussel, don't rip everything out of the shell and only use that and get rid of the shell. Always attach part of the shell, leave it attached to the meat, put that on your hook, cast it out. Second of all, with mussel, probably the very best mussel are the ones that you're going to find in the surf line on jetties. Those are going to be the bigger mussel, the stronger mussel. When you open those up, carefully remove the lip around the bottom and the top of that, and then take that lip, which is burnt orange and brown and off-colored white, which is now long like this and about the width of a pencil, and take that lip and feed it up your hook just like a worm, leaving about this much below the hook, and then cast that out and in a fan casting motion and retrieve that slowly towards shore. It looks like a worm coming out of the sand, but it's got the color of a mussel, all the natural colors in the area where you're fishing. And when the fish bites down on that, it'll hold on to it because it's got that nice mussel flavor to it. I can't tell you over the years how many halibut, legal halibut, big spot fin, and corbina I've caught on the lip of mussel.
Okay, I got a couple of people. Mike Lewis has a question right there, Bill, if you can see it, if you can read it. Mm-hmm. And then Anthony Armijo. Listen, this show's live Monday through Saturday, every Monday through Saturday. Bill is on the show every Wednesday. Bill's on the show every Wednesday. Plus, Bill has a whole detailed game plan, fish report that comes out every Thursday on our website. And Anthony, I'll show you the QR code for that in a few minutes. Mike Lewis has a couple of really good questions, Bill. And you know what's really cool, Mike Lewis? Your dock. If you stuck your head and looked underneath your dock, there's a billion mussels right there, free. They're free. You can grab them all. What we used to do as kids, grab them, stomp on them, stick it on a treble hook and throw it in the water with all the shell and everything connected to it, like Bill was saying. But Bill, talk to Mike about what's going on here.
Yeah, so Mike asks if I can only fish in a marina, inside the bay in the harbor, is it better on fished an incoming tide, an outgoing tide? And then you say that my whole marina is rock line. So here's a couple of different ways of looking at that. One of the benefits of fishing high tide. Now remember, when you have peak high tide, so you look at the tide chart. So here's one right here. You look at your tide chart, and when you have a peak high tide period, which would be, let's say the very bottom here, that's a low tide, or the very, get my finger going the right way, the very top here, that's a high tide. 30 minutes before, roughly, to 30 minutes after that peak high or peak low, very little water movement. You'll have very little fish biting. The exception is halibut. So if I'm going to fish a high tide in a harbor or a bay, I know that there's going to be that peak period where it could be slow for 40 minutes right in there. But 2 hours prior to 2 hours after, the benefit of that higher tide, another fish, is that all of the rock structure and everything inside the harbor or bay or marina area is covered with water. So that is an opportune time for fishing. Low tide, depending on where you're fishing inside a bay, another fish.
White
Low
sea
tide.
bass, another sea bass. Justin's in a wide open short sea bass bite. He's got a couple legals though. Sorry, Bill.
No, that's great. I mean, that's fantastic. There's some big ones. You just got to be patient. So inside that harbor area, I would fish it at a low tide period when I was able to get to an area to reach certain things I couldn't reach at high tide. So if I know there's a structure area a little bit farther than I can cast at high tide, but if I can walk out on the rocks at low tide and get closer to it and fish that area, I'm going to fish that area at low tide. So both high tide and low tide are going to work in the bay. More times than not, I'm fishing around the high tide period because I've got moving water in the bay and everything's being covered. The fish are coming in closer to those rocks now to feed. And then Matt's question here, how would you rig to night surf fish and what would you expect to catch? Okay, so here's a couple of crazy things to think about. And let's go back to the marina. Let's say that I had my boat tied up to the dock and I'm on a dock there, right? Fishing for sand bass and spotted bay bass at night is phenomenal. Most people do not fish for them at night. If you are on a dock or you have accessibility to a dock, all you have to do is I like to use a light bait casting reel on basically almost like a freshwater bass setup. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish a 2-inch black grub or a black swim bait at night. And I am just going to drop that straight down off of the dock. So it's in 4 or 5 feet of water, not very far down. And I'm going to slowly walk along that dock and pop it slowly as I go along there. And it will blow your mind how many giant spotted bay bass you'll catch right around your boat that's tied up to the dock. So that's inside the harbor. Outside the harbor, let's say go to the beach, and I can go anywhere from the Tijuana Slough to Point Conception, anywhere in between there. I'm going to be fishing at night on a high tide, going to a low tide. So once again, I'm going to look in the calendar here at my tide chart. I'm going to figure out, let's say, for example, high tide's at 11 o'clock at night, going to a low tide at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. Whenever that high tide ends and it's going to a low tide, that means the water is sucking offshore. That's when I'm going to go shark fishing at night. I'm going to use half a mackerel or a third of a bonita, a 6.0, 7.0, 8.0 hook, no sinker, fly lining it on 60-pound braid, 40-pound monofilament. And I am just going to cast that offshore, get the best cast I can offshore. That wave movement now that is sucking out as the tide goes down is going to pull my bait offshore. I'm going to leave my reel, so, something that has the capacity of 60-pound braid or 40-pound monofilament in free spool. I'm going to let that bait go offshore. It's going to be picked up by a 40-pound leopard shark. My line is going to peel off the reel like I've just hooked a yellowtail or tuna. I'm going to let it eat it for about 8 seconds, put it into gear, set the hook, and I'm going to fight that fish for 40 minutes up and down the beach until I get it onto the sand. So the only bugaboo there is there's quite a few beaches in Southern California that are off limits at 10 p.m. Some you can park and walk onto the sand. Others, they'll patrol the parking area, which will be closed at 10. So you have to be in a position, if you get asked to leave, to leave. But otherwise, surf fishing at night can be incredibly exciting. And if there's anything you need, I know that Monday's Promar's Day. You need the Promar headlamp, this right here. When you're fishing the beach at night, you want to be sure to have your headlamp on and fresh batteries so that you can see what you're doing. And when you get that big one to shore, you can take a picture of it and most likely let it go.
And gang, if you're enjoying Bill talking about this, and you've got to go over to our website. I got the QR code up there right now. You get access to Bill's game plans that come out on Thursdays, gang, that are going to put you in the zone where you want to be. If this sounds good, and we do this every Wednesday, those of you that are, oh, Justin's got another sea bass. Hold on. I'm trying to get it on the screen here. Hold on here. Let's see if I can get my fat head off of here. It's full speed sea bass fishing here. All right. So back to what Bill and I were saying. If you think that this is fun, listening to Bill and doing all this, you can be a part of our website, gang. You can get in-depth game plan from Bill every Thursday. He puts them out around somewhere between 3:30 and 4:30 in the afternoon. They come out, and they come out every single Thursday. And you get to get the inside information, plus a plethora of all the articles Bill's written. Anything you're trying to figure out in the surf, there's no reason to go out there and try to figure it out on your own anymore, gang. Life is too short. Things are happening too fast to not be successful when you go. That's why we brought Bill in to be a part of the website, like all the other guides, because we just want you all to be successful when you go do this. We want you to be successful. You got full access to Bill Varney. And when you become a member, guess what else you got? You got Bill's email address. You can email him and ask him any question. And what happens when they email you, Bill?
I tell them to call me.
Answer them.
They can email me and ask me any question, from how do you do this? How do you find this, to, where should I go fishing this weekend? And then they can always, and everybody who signs up, I call them on the phone. We personally talk about where they live, what their surf fishing, goals are, where they are as far as their abilities so far, what we can do to make them a better angler on the beach. And Dave, I have to tell you the God's honest truth that, in this day and age, things have changed. So what I do is that when somebody signs up for the site, and I get their name, I'll normally get their name, their email address, their phone number, possibly their home address. I will send them an email immediately telling them, hey, I'm really glad you're on the site. I'm really looking forward to working with you. What's your address? Because I'm going to send them an autographed copy of my book along with an ID card. But little do they know, Dave, I take their address and I go on Google Earth. I figure out exactly where they live, whether the beaches that are the closest to them, and then I give them, they can go right down to the beach where they live that's closest to their home and find fish. And a really good example I thought was really funny the other day was one of our new people on the surf fishing site. I looked up his address. He was probably 5 houses from the beach, and the beach that he was next to is a beach in Santa Barbara I've been to many times. It's a good halibut fishing beach. It's called Moore Mesa. Back 40 years ago when I went to college up there, 50 years ago, whenever it was, a while ago, and I went to college up there, that beach was an all nude beach. And so first of all, when I saw that they were adjacent to that, I had to chuckle. And I told them the story of how my buddies talked me into going fishing down there one day, and we loaded the stuff in the car. We drove like 15 minutes from our house in Santa Barbara. And it wasn't until I was probably halfway down the cliffs on the trail, I had noticed on the top of the trail that there were like 10,000 people on the beach. It was really crowded. It was near the university. And I thought, that's great, but I can see over there to the spot to the left where we can fish. And I was about halfway down the trail when I realized that I think I was the only person out of 10,000 people with my clothes on. So Black's Beach, Moore Mesa, Santa Barbara, 2 surf fishing beaches where clothes are not required.
And that's how focused Bill was on fishing. He didn't even notice there was a bunch of naked people. Oh my God.
Classic.
Hey,
so gang, anyway, you sign up for the site. I'm going to learn all about you. We're going to talk on the phone. We're going to get you dialed in. And then not only are there the weekly fishing reports, which we go out to you and to the world, but only to you is all of the technique and the information that you need to be successful on the beach. In our section there, every week there's an update on tides, swell, weather, wind, baits to be used, areas to fish. All that information's on there, along with videos and dozens of articles about absolutely everything about surf fishing. So really looking forward to more and more people signing up. And then right now, Dave, I've been talking to the guys and gals, and we're planning on what our date is, our first date to get down to the beach and have an on the beach surf fishing clinic only with the people signed up on your saltwater guide. It's really exciting.
And that's what I was going to say is, gang, there's a million websites out there all over the place, but I guarantee you there's no website where you get to talk to the owner or got to talk to Bill or Dave or Justin or Pablo or Al. We're the only website that allows you to speak to us. You go on any other website, fishing website or any kind of website, and just try to find who the owner is, let alone his phone number or his email. Just try to figure out who the owner is. Well, over here at Your Saltwater Guy, we pride ourselves on being personally touching you. Now, I know that's not for everybody. A lot of you just want to fail when you fish, and that's okay. We can't help those of you that want to fail. But those of you that want to be successful when you go, this is it. It doesn't get any better than this. We give you the personal touch. I talk to my guys every day. They're constantly sending me messages. Hey, I'm out fishing right now. Where should I go? I got 5 people that sent me messages right now. Where's Justin at? And you know what's going to be super cool? Tomorrow at 3:30 when Justin's game plan comes out, you're going to know exactly where he's at. He's going to tell you exactly where he was, exactly how they were doing it. And those of you that keep asking, he has live squid on the boat. They have live squid at the Nachos bait barge right now. So Justin's blessed. He has some live squid, and it's obviously working. Now, when Justin went to the spot he's at, he went there to get halibut. Unfortunately, he can't catch any halibut. All he can get is wide open white sea bass. So he's probably going to be bummed about that. He wanted a halibut. No, I'm just kidding. His client there, Paul, charters a boat twice a month. And I think he just caught his very first legal white sea bass. I've seen him throw 2 in the bag so far. So he may have more, but I know he's got 2 legals on the boat. And it looks like he's caught 10 or 12 shorts, which aren't that short. If you look at them, they're very, very close to being legal. And this is all the stuff you get at yoursaltwaterguide.com. Bill's game plans have been a phenomenal help to the whole thing because a lot of people that are watching our show, Bill, don't have access to a boat. They don't have it. So now you being a part of here and you sharing. Oh, here's Justin. Justin, what's going on?
Hey, I was just moving my phone so I could hear. Oh, I'm already bit.
Uh-oh. Wide open sea bass fishing. Here we are. He's bit. He's on. Hooked up.
Yeah.
Look at this. Doesn't get any better than this. You can't control the size, gang. And like Bill was saying, he's one bait away from a whopper. You've seen these sea bass school up before, Bill. You know there's a couple of big monsters in there, big hens swimming around, a bunch of little boys cruising around with her.
Absolutely. And like sometimes it's so funny on the meter. You look on the meter and there's so many on the bottom in like the one specific Johnson Rock is a good example for me, where there's so many on the bottom underneath the boat that you look at your fathometer and you think it's got to be broken, you know, and then you drop down and boom.
Yeah, pretty crazy. It's a good day fishing there with Justin. You see, he's right on the edge of the kelp. But if you want to know where he's at, you want to know where Bill's talking about fishing, those beaches and all the different things. Gang, I can't emphasize enough that you need to check out our website. And right now if you give me a call at 949, look like Paul just got a bite, 949-374-0786. I'll give you a free look at the website. You can look at it for free. And then you can make a decision if you want to be involved in this whole thing and be part of the greatest fishing community where everybody's sharing everything, or if you just want to go out there and wing it and try to figure it out on your own. Hopefully you got an epic amount of money to try to figure this fishery out on your own. And you can take your own time, like the guys on Instagram say all the time, Bill. Figure it out on your own like I had to. Well, we all know that didn't happen. Bill had a mentor. He talks about them all the time. I had mentors. Justin has mentors. None of us figured this thing out on your own. So if you're thinking you're going to figure it out on your own, well, that's not going to happen. Check out our website, 949-374-0786. I'll give you a free look. Free. There's no way for me to get in your wallet and get your credit card. You can look at it for free, and if you like it, you like it. Justin.
Yo, how are you
How
guys?
many legal sea bass do you have?
Legals?
Yeah.
None.
None?
None.
Oh, I thought you had two. I'm sorry.
No, not right now. We had one that was just an inch shy, but it's wide open though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's pretty wide open. You're going to get one. We're going to go live with Justin here right after we're done with Bill Varney, and you guys can watch Justin fishing live here. We're going to tune off the show here. Bill's going to say goodbye to everybody, and then we'll go back to Justin.
I'm on again.
Oh, no. Hold on. We'll wait 1 second for Justin.
Dead Stick King.
Crazy. Nope, he missed it. All right. Back to me and Bill. All right, gang. Okay. All right, Bill. So we're going to have a great game plan for you for this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Great, a fantastic game plan, and as I said, surf fishing continues good. It's good all year. It's better sometimes during the year than other times, and October, this is one of the months where as you can see, the weather conditions are beautiful to be down at the beach. There's nobody down there, and the fish are hungry because they know winter's coming. And that first little blast of cold water that comes through, they are going to bite like crazy, and then their metabolism's going to slow down. They're going to make their way back in the estuaries, and we're going to be off onto this big perch fishing for the winter. So really looking forward to that coming up. And everybody needs to check out the fish report, check out the game plan. That's how you get better at doing it.
Absolutely, gang. And we want to help you. That's the craziest thing you've ever seen, is we actually want to help you. We actually stop whatever we're doing and we talk to you on the phone, or we talk to you on an email, whatever way you want to communicate with us. We want you to become better at this fishing thing. We want you to be in the in, be in the click. And then the community is just insane. There's so many people on here that are members of the website and part of the community. And we're all sharing with tons of positivity, which you don't see much anymore in this day and age. John Milton, good to see you. Always a pleasure, my friend. I had so much fun fishing with you in Alaska. That was a blast. Everybody that's watching today, thank you all very, very much. We really enjoy all of your comments and posts and everything you guys do for us on the website. So thank you all very, very much for everything that you all do. And Bill, thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you got to get going. You're going to the cabin. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesdays to always be with us whenever you can. I'm glad you're feeling good and everything's good with you.
Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for watching, and can't wait to come on next week and give you an update on the surf.
You know what? You're right, Kelly. My camera lens needs to be clean. Bill's super clear and I'm super filthy, but that's pretty much how it's been my whole life. All right, everybody.